Okay. To bring you up to speed, at the end of chapter 2, the king honored God, praised God, fell on his face before Daniel, promoted all four guys. And then at the beginning of chapter 4, he builds this big 90-foot gold image of himself and says everybody has to fall down and worship him. On the one page, he's honoring God and giving glory to our God Jehovah and Daniel's God Jehovah. And on the very next page, he forgets all about the last page of chapter 2. The whole thing, he forgets it all. So, if you remember last week, there was a proclamation that everybody, every time they heard the cymbals and every time they heard the music and every time they heard the singing, they were to fall down and worship a 90-foot image. And anybody that didn't would be thrown into the fiery furnace. Okay. And if you remember, at the end of last week, what was this all about?
Control and control and revenge, basically, over the Jews.
Okay, and jealousy. Remember, he promoted Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego at the end of 2. And then all the sorcerers, all the astrologers, all his precepts, all of his governors, they conspired with this plan. Let's get him to build an image of himself and then get him to make a proclamation that everybody has to fall down and worship him. Who do you suppose this was targeted at? Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. The rest of them were jealous. And Don said it was about control. They wanted to get their control back. They didn't want these foreign Hebrews to be ruling their country. So that brings us up. And remember at the very end, they go to him and they say what? Did you notice those Jews? They didn't fall down and worship. Now, Nebuchadnezzar really likes these guys. He promoted them. He's put the whole kingdom in their hands. Basically now he's just laying around eating lobster. He's not doing much else of anything. Well, I guess they probably didn't have lobster in this country, but lamb. He's laying around eating lamb chops. So, they walk up to him and say, did you notice the Hebrews? They didn't fall down and worship your golden idol. And then what did they also remind him of?
The penalty. The penalty.
The penalty and this legal system was under
Yeah.
the Medes and the Persians.
His
and
world.
if the king signed the proclamation, he had to enforce it. He could not let him off. So they had him. They had him. They had these four guys, and they were going to get control back that they used to have in the kingdom. Well, we'll see how it goes. Summary 8:14 through 18. 13, 14, and 13 through 18.
Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Now when you hear the sounds of the horns, flutes, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I have made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve will be able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up.
Okay. He goes to him and he basically gives him a second chance. Well, maybe you didn't hear it. Okay? So, in 13, when the king's told this, he becomes angry. It says rage. And he summons the three men to face him. I want you in front of me. Okay. What was the first king's question in 14?
Is it true?
Is it true? Is it true? Are you guilty? Guilty or not guilty? Okay. It's kind of like being in court, he said. And, you know, he likes these guys. He's really hoping that they'll say, well, we didn't hear. Or, well, we had to pray about it. He was hoping they would get off. But their response was and he clarifies it. In 15, he says, prove your innocence. Prove that you're innocent. Okay. And how was he going to prove that they were innocent in 15?
Give them a chance to, when they hear it, to bow down.
Yep. And how would he give them the chance? Strike up the music. Okay, I'm here. Prove yourself. Prove that you're innocent. When they said they were innocent, what were they talking about?
They were innocent for God.
They were innocent in God, but not to the law. Okay. We ended with this thought last week. And does the Bible ever say obey the law?
No.
I gotta know. No.
But it says, yeah.
As long as it does not.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it doesn't say obey the law, it says to conform to the law? Submit to the law, submit to the law.
I looked up in the Bible hundreds of verses that used obey, obedience, obeying, obeyed, whatever. It only pertains to God in every one of those verses. Obedience, our obedience is only to God. But it also says submit to the law. Give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. You're to submit to the law, but not necessarily be obedient to the law. And it's what faith said. As long as it doesn't violate my obligation to God, his law comes first. Now, how does submit work?
If they throw you in jail, go.
Yep. Said, I couldn't be obedient. You know, these guys are about to say, I couldn't be obedient, so throw me in the fire furnace. I will not run, I will not hide, I will not plead innocent. I am guilty of not obeying your law, but I'm innocent of obeying God's law. So submission means, if I'm speeding, I say, whoops, I'm sorry, you're right, I was speeding, and I pay the fine. You submit to, if you can't submit to the law, you submit to the consequences. You don't fight. You don't lie. You don't say, I'm innocent, I wasn't going 90 miles an hour. And you know you were. How can you be going 90 miles an hour and not know it? Okay? Let's be honest about it now. Don't we try to make excuses? Don't we try to make excuses? Yeah, I told you last week I was coming out of the McDonald's. One day I was over there working on a job with Josh, and I was really thirsty. And I pulled into the McDonald's and I got a drink. I didn't go inside. I was covered with dirt, I was covered with dust, and we'd been drywalling. I had paint all over me. So I pulled into the drive-thru and I got a drink. And I had to undo the belt to get my to get my charge card. Handed him my charge card, got my drink, put it in the cup. There were people behind me, so I took off and I went around and I pulled out on them, and there was a town cop from straight ahead. Turns on these lights, pulls into McDonald's, and I thought, what is, and there was my seatbelt. How did he know that? But I reached down and I buckled it real quick. I thought, well, maybe it's a tail light or something. So he pulled me over. He said, do you know why I pulled you over? I said, I got an idea. I said, how did you know? He said, well, your belt buckle is silver and it was showing when you pulled out on the road. I said, yeah, I just got a drink and then put my billfold away and I hadn't fastened it again. He said, well, I said, no, I'm guilty. So he gave me a ticket and I paid him $25 and I went on about my way. I was guilty. I could have made all kind of excuses. But the bottom line is I was guilty. I did.
Well, sometimes if you're nice about it, they let you go. Because I was coming back from my martial arts class and wasn't paying attention, was thinking about where I was going, was speeding, cop coming the other way, and she turned on her lights, and I knew exactly. She came up behind me, I stopped, she got on the side of me, I rolled down the window, had my hand, did it. And she said, you were speeding. I said, yeah. I said, I'm sorry. I said, I was not paying attention, my fault. And she gave me a warning. And so it was just like, I was ready to pay for it because I wasn't paying attention. I was focused on where I was going, not my speed.
A lot of times, if you own up to it, they'll just give you a warning. I guess on a seatbelt, they're not allowed to. They have to issue the summons if it's a seat. But it was $25 and I was wrong.
My car won't let me do that.
You're what?
My car won't let me do that. It tells me right away when I don't have my seatbelt on.
I just buckle mine behind me.
Well, this was an old 98 Mercury Mountaineer, and it didn't have all those bells. Okay, so I'm gonna play the music, and you're gonna fall down and worship me, right? And if they did, what was he gonna do? It was gonna be a warning ticket, just like that. He was gonna exempt them if they did it the second time. All right, let's see how this goes. The firm reply, verse 16. What was their first reply?
We don't need to defend ourselves. That's what they said.
You ever thought about that? We don't need to defend ourselves. The world's getting kind of hostile to Christianity. And we find people out there defending themselves. You remember the 3 steps to peace?
Is God okay with me?
Is God okay with me? Okay. Number 2,
Is my conscience clear?
is my conscience clear? Number 3,
Nothing else matters.
nothing else matters.
This was drilled about 10 years ago.
I gave that to her when she was going through a hard time. She remembered all 3. I mean, if God's okay with me,
It's bad enough you remember.
if God's okay with me and He's not telling me to repent or He's not telling me to fix it, and you're not, who takes precedence? God. God takes precedent. I don't serve the world, I serve God. And if God's okay with me and a bunch of gossips wants to tear me down, shame on them. I'm gonna get on with my life. I'm not gonna lose a week's sleep over it. I'm not gonna make a public spectacle out of it. I'm gonna shrug my shoulders and say, whatever, and walk away. Is that how we usually respond? No. We respond like we're guilty. We start defending ourselves. That plays into Satan's hands. That gives him the power over me. And how does it end? I get torn down. Walk away. If you're innocent, you're innocent. If your conscience clear, your conscience is clear.
I always tell them if it's like, they're having an issue with it, I always tell them, well, it sounds like a you problem, not a me problem.
Cool, that's good. That's good. Sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. When you get into this debate and this back and forth, the only person that's gonna get torn down is you. And the only person that's gonna win is him, is them. We don't answer to the world. Now, if God is dealing with you about it, if he is saying, you should have handled that different, or you should have loved that person instead of yelling at them, you owe that person an apology because God's dealing with you. Bottom line, if we follow what the Bible says, and we're going to be confronted by the world. Why? Because it condemns them. It makes them think about the situation. They want to be right, but deep down in their heart, they know that all that gossiping is wrong. And all those lies against me are wrong. I was going to be promoted to a job in the post office. Well, I guess it was 40 years ago now. I've been retired for 20 years. But I was going to get promoted, and this other guy really wanted it. And he started spreading rumors around that I was doing all kinds of things that I wasn't doing. He told my boss that I was skipping work at my post office because I had a second job at Walmart. My boss called me up and said, Bill, I have this charge against you that you have been missing work and you have a second job at Walmart. I said, now, Bud, think about that for a minute. I am going to walk away from a $30 an hour job to work at Walmart for $6.50. So does that make sense? No. But he also said that he came in last week and that you were not in the office. I said, last week? He said, yeah. I said, what day? He said, Wednesday. I said, well, Bud, where was I last week on Wednesday? He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you authorized the trip to Minnesota. He said, oh, you were in Minnesota teaching computer classes. I said, yeah. I said, do I need to say any more? He said, no, I'll take care of it. And he slammed it. Guy never got on my case again. And he didn't get promoted. And the last time I know, and I didn't say a word against him. I didn't mention his name. I didn't campaign against him. But the last time I knew of him, just before I retired, he was down at the Indianapolis Post Office working in a little room about the size of a closet. It didn't have any windows. And all he was doing was paperwork. And he hated it. I didn't try to get him there. I didn't want him there. I just simply said, Bud, where was I last? And the last I knew of him, he really regretted that he had never done that. I don't have to defend myself. God will defend me. And these guys are saying basically that. God will defend me. What's the second thing they said? I do not need to defend myself. My first loyalty belongs to God. What's number 2?
God can rescue us.
Huh?
God can rescue us.
Yep. God can save us. God can rescue us. They look at the king that has their life in his hand, and they say, God will rescue us. Now that took some guts. This guy could turn around and say, hey, stick a spear in them. And that would be the end of it. They put their faith in God. What's another really, later on, several hundred years later, with Jesus, where he did basically the same thing?
He slipped, they were gonna throw him off of a cliff and he slipped through. Is that what you're talking about, when he was rescued, or?
Pilate.
Oh,
Yeah, Pilate told him that basically his life was in his hands, and Jesus said, no, it's not. But
Pilate said, don't you realize that your life is in my hand? Jesus said, no, it isn't. You can't take my life. I lay down my life freely. Now, Pilate could have had 10 spears stuck in him in about 10 seconds. And what did Pilate do when Jesus said that? He went out on the balcony and he tried to get the crowd to turn him loose. He said, I'll give him to you. He will be the one I set free. And they said, no, we want Barabbas crucified. But Pilate didn't crucify him. Who crucified him?
the crowd, the Jews. Or the pharaohs, the Pharisee.
The high priest. Yeah, the Pharisee. He was a Pharisee. The high priest crucified him. Now, it was impossible at that point in time for a Jew to take the life of another person. The only person who could take Jesus' life was the guy in charge, and at this point in time, it was Pilate, the Roman. He was the governor of he couldn't take Jesus' life if Jesus was going to be the sacrifice for my sins. Only the high priest could do it. So Satan's dancing the jig over to the corner saying, Pilate has to do it. The sacrifice won't be accepted. I got him. And Pilate looked at the high priest and said, I find no fault with this man. You take him and do with him whatever you want to. And he transferred the authority to the high priest, which made the sacrifice acceptable. Now that could not legally be done in Jesus' day, and yet it got done. And these guys knew that God was going to rescue them. What's the third thing? We trust God to rescue us. We're going to put our trust in God. And the fourth thing?
said,
No matter what happens,
No matter what happens, we cannot betray God. We cannot. So basically, they're saying, throw us in the furnace. All right. Somebody read 19 to 23.
Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. His attitude toward them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent and the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace.
They didn't actually throw them in, really. Catch that last one, they fell in. They fell in. When these guys were struck dead by the heat of the fire, they could have got away. But they fell into the furnace. They went ahead and took the punishment. All right. 19. The king made a kind of a special proclamation there. What did he order them to do?
Make the furnace 7 times hotter than usual.
Now, this furnace was used to make pottery, like 1200 degrees inside of it. He wants it 7 times hotter. Steel melts at 2000 degrees. I mean, this was a hot furnace. It was so hot that they just getting close. The guys that had bound them were struck dead by the heat. But they weren't affected in any way, and in fact, they fell into the furnace. And in 20, who do you assign to the task?
The strongest soldiers.
The what?
Some of the strongest
The
soldiers.
strongest soldiers. Who guarded the castle?
The strongest, the best of the best.
The best of the best guarded the castle. The king wanted the strongest and the mightiest and the best warriors. When they proved themselves on the battlefield, they got promoted to the secret police. Or, what's the president's?
Secret Service.
Secret Service.
Yeah.
Secret, that, I knew secret, but he didn't say. The Secret Service guards the president. They're supposed to be the best of the best of the best. It was the same way in Jesus' time. Pilate was protected by the best soldiers in the army. And these guys were the strongest of the strong. Then they bound them. That's had a double whammy. You got the strongest guys, they got their hands on you, they're holding on to you. And then they wrap you up in ropes. And you drag you over to the furnace, and they're standing there getting ready to throw you in. They drop dead, and the Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego fall into the furnace. Okay. They didn't actually execute it. They dropped dead, and they went into the furnace. That's what Jesus did. Pilate didn't kill him. He gave his life freely. It was kind of a foretelling of that day when Jesus Christ would do the same thing. Okay. The first result, number 3 at the bottom, verse 22. Oh, he did that. The fire was so bad, he killed his soldiers. And the second result, the 3 friends fell into the fiery furnace, securely tied. Okay, we'll pick this up next week and we'll find out how the chapter 3 ends. Yes?
Where's Daniel?
Huh?
Where is Daniel?
Well, he's in chapter 4.
He's in chapter 4.
I'm
Same-
assuming he
same
didn't
thing.
bow down either.
Same thing's going on, and we'll find out in chapter 4 where Daniel is.
Okay.
And the story's pretty similar.
I didn't realize that the golden image was of Nebuchadnezzar. I don't think does it say that? I didn't see anywhere where it said that, but
Statues.
I don't know, let me look that up. Well, it was a statue made by him, ordered
Yeah.
by him, but
Yeah, it doesn't say
I-
that it was of him, it just says a large,
It-
enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance, made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and sides of bronze, its legs of iron.
That's the dream statue we're talking
Oh,
Yeah, but
too far back.
It just says, it just says an image I made, you know, it's
That-
very
that's the
good.
vision. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Pages are thin.
Let me research that and we'll pick it up
but it
there.
doesn't matter, but.
Yeah. It was,
No,
Yeah.
it's a good question and it's a good point.
about. In my notes, it just says a gold statue.
Yeah.
It doesn't say what it's of. If you remember, have you ever seen those, like the Babylonian winged creatures and stuff like that? They made
Mhm.
statues, probably one of them. Great big one.
but it belonged to him and he made the decree. I mean,
Yeah. it was
Represents.
Of one of his gods,
Yeah.
Charlie.